my sponsor got me a copy of the tape of this gentleman. He spoke in California, and I savored it to the journey up here. And I was with a girl that I sponsor, and we listened to it. And it was so nice to be traveling up here on the road, and I was crying with him, I was laughing with him. I could feel his pain and his joy. And he really inspired me, and I'm looking forward to hearing him again. So please help me welcome Frank G.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank, and I am an addict. Very, very grateful to be here, and I, like everyone else, I want to thank the committee for asking me to come here, and I want to thank my higher power for having me here. I don't believe, that my recovery is a mistake or it has anything to do with luck. I remember being in my house maybe 3-4 years ago, and I asked my Heavenly Father if He ever seen fit that I would welcome the opportunity to do something like this. I very, very grateful to Narcotics Anonymous because I have a life today. Before I used to just dream about having a life, And I don't know. I've heard so many good things at this convention. My cup is full. I've been to a lot of countless meetings, not only in the rooms themselves, but in the hallways and in the buses and by the pool. And it's really weird talking up here, because every time I say something, I hear an echo. And so I kind of get it fed back to me, but that's cool. I want to welcome everybody, that's here. I mean, it's so special. We're countries, worlds, continents, What I love about this program is that I came to this program and I had boundaries, I lived with fences. And now Narcotics Anonymous for me has no boundaries. It's limitless, I can go anywhere, anytime, and I can have a family to walk into. And I'm gassed by everybody says, hello, my name is so-and-so, and hello, family, because that's what it is. I came to Narcotics Anonymous and I had lost the attitude, the thought, the love, and the feeling of a family. I'm one of those people that I love the NA text because it talks about in there that we believe that our illness, that our disease started before we took the first drug. Because I'm one of those people that before I had this disease of addiction, I had a dis-ease for a long time. I'm here today with my wife and my 6-year-old son, and my 6-year-old son is fine, We're coming up here from California, and our plane leaves at 6 o'clock in the morning, so we're up at 5, right? And my son, I can relate with him so much because what he's doing at 5:30 in the morning, he's standing in the bathroom and he's going pee, And he looks up at me with a big smile and he says, Daddy, look at, I'm sinking battleships, see? And I love that, I'm checking him out and he's wearing it really, really loose, and I'm saying, right on, how many are you sinking? He goes, look at, one's going down, and they were little matchsticks, and he, men can do that. They can shoot things when they're going to the bathroom, see? And we can aim it and all of that kind of stuff, and so I related with him. And as quiet as it's kept, that's the way that it was for me a long, long time ago. I am so grateful So grateful for the 12 steps because there was one thing that I never wanted to look at or re-feel or deal with, and that was my past. See? I took drugs for a lot of different reasons. I always do this, and I need to know what time is this thing over with that I'm supposed to stop. Okay, good. So we'll probably be here till Monday, okay? So what's happening is that, I didn't want to look at any of that, I remember standing on the corner the first time I was 12, 13 years old. And I always wanted to be like the older guys because they looked so cool. They drove around in a car. They looked to me like they didn't have to answer to anybody, and we called them veteranos, the older guys, And I wanted to be like them so bad, and I remember going into a store and boosting some wine, and me, my brother, and my partner Jimmy, we stood on that corner for the first time, and we guzzled. We didn't drink anything. We guzzled it, Just bub, 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 bub. You open up your throat, and it just boom, it dances down. And the reason is that, number one, I had a lot of stuff inside of me that I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to deal with, and I just didn't want to feel anything. What ended up happening is that, when I was young, I had a good life. I used to enjoy playing in the creek, throwing rocks, skipping them, and doing all of that crazy stuff, building tree houses. I had a good life when I was a kid. I was innocent, I was free, and I wasn't hung up with any resentments, guilt, shame, fear, bitterness, anxiety, you know what I mean? I used to shoot things in the bathroom just like my son did, And my son, he goes to sleep now and he doesn't wake up until 10, 11 o'clock. After all of the crap he causes me and my old lady, he still sleeps calmly. You know what I mean? He just isn't in touch with anything, and I love it, man. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I have a good life as a kid, Second step says that we come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, because I started later on. What ended up happening is that I've got my mom and I've got 5 brothers. I've got 1 sister, and I don't really know any of them because when I was very young, my mom couldn't handle all of us. My father was in the service, and so she couldn't handle all of us, and so she took me and my older brother, one of my older brothers, to live with my grandparents. And I didn't have any of this explained to me by her. Later on, my grandfather explained all of this to me, and so did my grandmother. And so I get left at my grandmother's house, and I don't know what's happening. And what ends up happening is inside of my grandmother's house was my grandmother, my grandfather, my Aunt Hopi, my Aunt Lucy, my Uncle Carlos, my Uncle Poli, and my Aunt Daniela. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that in one of the bedrooms, my Aunt Hopi lives there with Michael and Larry, and in the back of the house, in the garage, my Aunt Carlos and my Uncle Cuca live there, and they got 4 kids, Chucky, Phyllis, George, and Hendry. See? And then there's me and my brother there, and so we lived in a recovery house environment, And it was crazy, see, because the only person that I cared about in that house was me. What I wanted, what I needed, what I felt. I didn't really get hip to that there was a lot of other people there. And so anyway, we're sitting at the dinner table, and this is a world convention of Narcotics Anonymous, so the situations might change. In my case, it was the tortilla, and in your case, it might be a Chinese egg roll, a plate of sushi, or some Italian dish, or whatever. But we'd sit there at the table, and I'd miss my father. I miss my father a lot. I had that feeling, and through the 4th step, I was able to write about how I felt and what I thought, because before I got to this program, I had all kinds of resentment, and I had all kinds of fear. That's why when I came in here, I didn't want anybody to touch me, see? I didn't want anybody to get close to me, because being close to me means that you might leave, and if you leave, I don't want to have to deal with that again, and I've been trying to forget that for a long, long time. I don't need anybody. Leave me alone. See? I didn't know that part of my addiction and the disease of my addiction was the isolation and the separation from the human race, And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I'm there and we're having dinner as usual, lots of different times, and Hopi reaches over and she grabs the last tortilla for Michael, and I see that come down, and right away I start thinking in my head, you know, she's burning me and how dare her, and she's out of line, and if my dad wasn't here, he'd knock that broad in the head and nobody would get the last tortilla. And I take this one tortilla thing and I turn it into a revolution against Hopi, Michael, and Larry, because I hate them all now, see? And anytime Kuka did something, I hate Kuka, and then when I don't even only hate Kuka, then I hate her husband because he let her do that, and then I end up hating Chucky, Carlos, Phyllis, and George. And so I'm in my house I ain't even used yet, you know what I mean? And I got resentments up the yin-yang. And this is against my own family, see? But I didn't have the luxury that I do today. I didn't know about, I couldn't get up from the table and say, excuse me everybody, I'm going to go call my sponsor, I'm going to go to a step meeting, you know, I need to work the 11th step on this tortilla situation. You know, I wasn't hip to any of that, see? And so I started stacking up things, you know? And where I stuck them up, where I started stacking them up at is inside, this dis-ease, 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 see? And I start getting all kinds of resentments in there. And the reason that I share this stuff is it's very, very important to me, because I believe what's written in our text. I've taken the time to study it. I've taken the time to pray about it. I take the time to go to people that have been in the program as long or not as long. I listen when I go to meetings and I hear people over and over again. See? Because I've been in Narcotics Anonymous for a little while, and it sometimes it pisses me off. See? I get angry. See? Not at who I am or who God is, but I get angry at the insanity, you know. I get friends of mine that come into the program, and they want to stay clean. They are not foolish. They are not stupid. They're not burned out. They want to stay clean. But I see that when they come to the steps, they stop, you know. And what ends up happening is I sit down and I talk with them, and they're mad at somebody in the program of Narcotics Anonymous. They repeat the resentment of the family. And pretty soon, they don't want to come to a meeting anymore. They don't want to go to that meeting because somebody's talking, see? And all over again, if I'm not careful, I do the same thing in Narcotics Anonymous that I did on Dalmas Street. I kick myself out of the family because I start stacking up these resentments. I don't write about them, I don't pray about them, and I don't talk to nobody about them. I just run with them, see? And so anyway, because my first year in Narcotics Anonymous, I didn't stay in this program. I went in and out 8 different times, but every time I was here, I wanted to stay clean. See, as quiet as it's kept, I honestly thought that this thing was about magic. I thought I could come into Narcotics Anonymous and I thought I could get this program the way that I got everything. Just because I wanted it, I was going to get it. I fell in love with being a thief because if you didn't have a colored TV, it was really, really simple. You went into somebody's house and you took the colored TV and you put it in your house and you had a colored TV. That's magic, see? See? If you wanted a radio, you know, like What's-His-Name had, you know, you waited until What's-His-Name had his back turned and he was your friend, and you would take his radio. And then he would say, have you seen my radio? And he said, no, man, I'll help you look for it. Let's, you know, yeah, where's it at, you know? See? And you would steal whatever you wanted. See, and I thought I could come into this program, and I thought that it would just happen for me. I thought if I just sat down long enough, you know, and didn't use anything, see, and just did whatever I wanted to, I would stay clean, see. But as quiet as it's kept, I didn't realize that I was going to have to change my thinking, see. But in order for me to change my thinking, I didn't realize that I was going to have to talk to somebody about my thinking first, you know, because like it says in the steps, we admitted that we were powerless. I didn't want to admit nothing to nobody because I was afraid of people, so I wasn't going to talk to anybody because I could do this thing alone, and so I didn't have a we in my program. It was I'll do it alone. I'll do it by myself. And so I go on there at Dalmas Street, and I keep stacking up resentments left and right. You know, I'm starting to hate everybody. Comes Christmas time, there's a bicycle, and I know the bicycle is mine. It's like Pee Wee Herman's bike. It's, you know, it's a red Swin. It's got the little things hanging from the side, you know. It's got the nice fenders, and I come out of there early in the morning, and I look at that bike, and right away, my imagination takes over, you know. And my imagination lots of times can work against me, because I looked at that bike and I said, all right, everybody's going to be wanting to touch my bike. Everybody's going to want to ride my bike. I ain't letting nobody do nothing on my bike, you know. And I run over to get my bike and I sit on top of the mother, you know what I'm saying? I'm actually on this puppy. See, and I'm in the living room, but really I'm outside on the sidewalk riding around, and everybody's wishing they had what I had. And all of a sudden, they tell me, quítate de esa bicicleta, porque esa bicicleta es de Miguel. See? So get off that bike, because that bike belongs to Michael. And right away I said, damn lousy motherfucker, you know. And right away I got mad at Michael again. I got mad at my grandfather because he didn't have the money to buy me one, and he should have bought me one, because if anybody deserves a bike in this house, it's me, you know. And screw Michael and his neck and his mom and the horse they rode in on, and you know what, knock them all, you know. And so I go on like this, see, but I didn't know. I didn't know any of that, man. Once again, I can't call a sponsor. I can't go to a meeting. And what I keep hoping for is when my dad gets home, he's going to take care of all of this. Because when my dad gets home, he's not going to let anybody mess with me. He's not going to let anybody hurt me anymore. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that finally my dad does get home. He gets out of the Army. And my dad was a telephone pole inspector, and my dad used to love to use narcotics, you know. He used to go to bars all the time, and when I was there at my grandfather's house, my grandfather spoke nothing but Spanish, and I used to translate all of the TV programs from him, and I had a whole agenda set up for me and my dad, see. I already knew how our life was going to be, because I used to watch the Leave It to Beaver show, see. And my dad was going to be Mr. Beaver, and we were going to find a Mrs. Beaver. My brother was Wally, you know, and I was the Beaver, see. And if you watch the Beaver show, it's, hello, Beaver, how you doing? You want a cookie, Beaver? And I would just sit there and I'd say, right on, Beaver. You know, Beaver's got everything he wants, you know. And so I thought I was going to be a Beaver Frank Garcia, and so I was all ready for it, man. I was all ready for it. My dad never watched the Beaver show, though. So he didn't know his part. And so we come home, and he comes home, and we start traveling all over California, because he's a telephone pole inspector. And every time we got into a town, it would take him 2 days, 3 days, maybe a couple hours, and he would come walking in with Mrs. Beaver, see? He found her down at the local bar, see? And right away, as soon as he'd walk in, he'd say, this is your new mom. And I'd go, right away. I didn't see her. I seen the Beaver's mom, see? And I seen everything. I says, right on, hi, Mom, and everything like that. And 2 days, 3 days, a week later, she'd be gone. There'd be a big fight, and I'd wait for the next Mrs. Beaver, you know? And I don't know how my brother took this. I didn't care what my father thought. I didn't care what was happening with the last Mrs. Beaver. I'm just still waiting for the Beaver to happen in my life, you know? And so anyway, we go through about 7 Mrs. Beavers, you know? Over and over again, Miss Beaver would walk in and Miss Beaver would walk out, see? And at one time, I had a lot of dreams and aspirations, and I was a good kid, you know, because I don't believe that we're bad people, you know. For me, I know that I was a confused person, and I continue to have this dis-ease. And anyway, what ends up happening is that finally, like the second step says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I started getting insane. I believed that, you know what, love was for fools, it's chumps. There's no such thing as the Beavers. That was a crock, you know. You got to get what you can from who you can and screw them, you know. And so anyway, my heart starts to get harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and I started to care less and less about things like that. And I didn't realize it. You know, I was one of them people that if you talk bad about my father, I was supposed to get in your face. Even if you hurt me, I was supposed to get in your face. If you talked about my mom, I was supposed to get in your face, and I didn't know why, you know. And so I felt that if I ever thought anything bad about my parents, I was no good. So I would just keep pushing those things down and never looking at any of them. So by the time I come to Narcotics Anonymous, I'm a basket case. You know, not only have I been using for 12 or 13 years, I got all of this unsettled business, see? And so anyway, what ends up happening is that me and my dad, we moved back to California. Back to San Jose, California, and my Uncle Paul, he gets out of Folsom, and he was in there for 8 years, and to him, you know, to me, he was like a warrior. He was so beautiful. He had all kinds of tattoos, and, you know, when you go to the joint, lots of times all you do is get on the bench pile and you press, and he looked to me like, you know, some guys out of Star Wars or something like that, and he looked beautiful, man. Very, very handsome, you know. And so he calls me by his side one day and he tells me, ven pa' acá. You know? He says, nunca trastea a los gabachos y nunca trastea a los mayates. Quédate con tu gente. See? He tells me, he says, never trust white people and never trust black people. You stay with your own kind. I never heard this before. See, but it's coming from my uncle. See, because before I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I had a thing with prejudice. You know, I was afraid of people, different classes. And I honestly thought, you know what, this is my uncle. I've got to listen to him. You know, he's trying to get me hip to something. And I leave there 6 years, you know, like my 6 years old. I got to be very, very careful what I tell my children today. Very, very careful. You know, yesterday Mario kept asking me questions when he heard the main speaker, you know. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I start to get this thing of prejudice and I start to run with just a particular crowd and everything like this. And I had to deal with that when I came to NA, because when I came into NA, not only did I have a disease of addiction, I had a disease of this ego and pride, you know. And it was hard for me to ask somebody to be my sponsor, you know, especially if they didn't hang out in the same street corner, or if they knew the same guys, and it got in the way of my recovery. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I get that from him, and I pick up all kinds of stuff. I think the main thing that happened when I was young and before I even started using is that I had resentments, you know, I had prejudice, I had hate, and I had some guilt and shame, see? Because then a lot of other things started happening to me. I'm there and I'm sleeping in this house, and my dad's always gone back and forth and stuff like this, and I'm living there and 2 and 3 people sometimes in a bed, and I always get put in bed with my Uncle Bobby, and my Uncle Bobby's mentally retarded. And what ends up happening is he starts to molest me, and I start to feel like, you know what, I can't tell nobody this. They're going to hit me. They're going to say that it's my fault. They're not going to, you know, believe me, you know. And I would get hit, and I would get pushed into the bed, and I would hate it, and I would lay there. And you know, I had to write about that because for a long time, man, see, before I got to this program, I studied hard to be a homeboy, to be a dope fiend, you know, to be a thief. And you know, when you go get locked up and everything, you can't tell nobody you were molested as a kid. They tell you, come here, dude. You know what I'm saying? Let's party, you know, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And it was weird, man. It was weird. And so anyway, what ends up happening is I come to this program with hundreds and thousands of secrets, you know, stuff that I wasn't going to share with anybody. I wasn't going to tell a dead dog what had happened to me. But I came in here and I says, you know what, I'm going to get over on Narcotics Anonymous because I'm not going to work the 12 steps, not this dude. See, I'm hip, I'm slick, I'm cool. Anytime I go into a place, there's the rules, I'll always find a shortcut. You know how we do when we have to get in line? There's 14 people ahead of us, and we go up there and we look for a friend, and then we just melt into the pot rather than wait in line. You know what I'm saying? And I still do that kind of stuff today. I did that to a couple lines here, so if I got in front of you, excuse me, okay? And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I'm standing there on the corner, and I take that first drug, you know? And it did exactly what I expected it to do. It helped me not, number one, to feel anything, you know. It helped me to forget everything, you know. And it helped me to feel a false sense of feeling good, you know. And that's all that I wanted because I was pissed off at the world and I didn't trust it. If you can't trust people in your own family, who are you going to trust? That's why it was so important. When I came here as a newcomer, as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that will tear us apart, all will be well. See? And the ties that bind me together to you people is, number one, I have to trust the program of Narcotics Anonymous because as quiet as it's kept, I've been everywhere else seeking recovery, seeking love, you know, an understanding for forgiveness. You know, and I didn't find it. And so anyway, I drink and I use, and I'm like everybody else. I use everything that comes in my path, and I keep changing like I change shirts, you know. If it stopped making me feel a certain way, I went to something else, and I just went on and on and on. If I would have came to this program when I was 13, I would have came in as a glue sniffer, you know. If I would have came to this program when I was 14, I would have came in as a gasoline sniffer, you know, airplane glue, lighter fluid. You know, I remember when I found out that you could sniff gasoline, I got really, really excited. I says, I don't have to wait for anybody to score anymore. I looked at all the cars and I got all excited and I says, man, the whole world's mine. You know, I says, man, all I got to do is just pull off a cap and, you know, and I'm gone, dude. I don't have to wait for anybody to buy me any beer. I don't have to wait for anybody to score me any weed. I don't have to wait for anybody to burn me. I don't even need money. You know what I'm saying? I thought I was home free. Okay? And what ends up happening, just like everything else, it hurts me too much. I can't handle it. And I started getting these headaches that, man, I could not bear, you know. And so anyway, I use and I use and I use and I use and I use. And I did all of the things that I had to do for using. You know, the main thing that I had to do is that I had to stop being a human being. Because you can't be a dope fiend and have a conscience. They don't go together. See? Because I was out there in the street and I stole from anybody that I met. My attitude was the only two things that matter in this world is money and dope. You know? And whoever had dope had the prestige. And that's why I think our traditions say, do not let money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose, because that's all I went after when I was using money, you know, because money meant power, you know. Being a connection, having dope. Who's got the dope? Frank does. Yeah, boom, the prestige. You know, how much time have you done? It's all crap, you know. And so anyway, what ends up happening is I continue to use and I continue to use, and it didn't get any different. And it didn't get any better. Just the faces changed, the days changed, and the time got longer, and it got lonelier on the corners, you know. And there was a time, you know, that I had some semblance, I thought, of feeling good about it. You know, I used to iron my khakis and just enjoy smoking weed. But see, I didn't know that my disease was progressing. I didn't know that. See, I thought I had a handle on this sucker. I thought I could get off the bus anytime I wanted to. And that's what I relate with so many people here, because I never had addiction. You know, the disease of addiction explained to me. I thought I was a dope fiend and I could stop anytime I wanted to when I was young. And I didn't know, man, that I had this compulsion, this insanity, and this whole spiritual thing just dying and dying more and more in me. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I start doing the same thing that my dad did. You know, I just started using women, I used people, I used everything. My first marriage, I got a son, Salvador. He's 19 years old now. You know, and the only reason we got married is because she used to cash checks and I used to pull burglaries, and when I would get busted, she would do the checks and get me out, and when she got busted, I would do the burglaries and I would get her out, and we lived like this together for 4 years, you know. But I'll be honest with you, even when I was using them, this thing inside of me, my heart kept telling me, you know what, maybe one of these days I won't have to do this. But you can't tell the homeboys that. You getting tired? What do you mean? You know, why don't you go to church? You know, if you're tired of boosting, get out of here, you know. And so anyway, I have a son with her. I get together with this other lady, and I have 2 other sons, you know. These were the only people in my life that never did anything wrong to me. What they did is they called me daddy, and that gassed me. But see, I'm the kind of person that I'm stealing and robbing and cheating and lying from them, and I don't feel like I'm a daddy. I feel less than all of the time. And so anyway, I start to feel very, very lonely, very, very afraid, you know, and very, very much ashamed. See, and I didn't have anyone to share that with, and I start looking for recovery. I ate bananas with the Hare Krishna people because they look real happy. They jump up and down in sheets. They sing songs. Anything was better than what I had, you know. And so I cross my legs and I sit down with them, and they're eating bananas, and I like tortillas and meat and beans and stuff like that, and potatoes, you know, and they're eating all this fruit and stuff, and I think, no, this ain't for me, you know. I remember going to a Mexican revolutionary group, and I sat down right in the front row. I says, yeah, maybe if I get back into my culture and my roots, I'll be all right. And these people want to do nothing but kill people, and they want to buy guns. And I said, these people are going to go straight to the joint. I've been locked up. I don't want to do that. So I leave them people, you know. The way that I got to this program was that I went door to door with the Jehovah's Witnesses, see. And by this time, I'm on 80 milligrams of methadone, and I've been using heroin for the last 9 years. And so I buy a suit at Sears. It costs $29, $30. And I'm going door to door, you know? And this guy's doing all the talking, and I'm figuring, once again, I'm looking just for the magic, see? Something zap me, something take this away, something make it just all happen right away. I look up the word magic in the dictionary, and it says that the definition for magic is the ability or the art by sleighting of hands, creating an illusion. See? And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for that, just sliding of the hands, moving things around, not doing anything inside, admitting anything, not confessing anything to anybody, not writing anything down, not talking to somebody else. I was just going to move things around and everything was going to be okay. You know how we move from state to state, to country, and we just keep trying to create some magic in our lives that maybe it'll all go away and we'll wake up brand new, happy, joyous, and all that kind of crap, you know, and that's what I kept waiting for, you know, and I'm thinking, well, maybe if I knock on enough doors, I'll wake up without an obsession and I can get off this methadone. What an insanity, you know, and so it was good. I'm going now down 13th Street, and I'm going to go sell this suit because nothing's happened. I'm still using it, and I'm still strung out. I wake up one morning, and the bacon is sizzling, and one of my sons, Frankie's saying, Mom, when's Pop going to come and eat? You know? And I wake up as a thing, you know, a dope fiend, strung out to the max, and we're on welfare like we always are, and I decide I'm going to take the last $15 out of the purse, so I sneak it out. I don't want anybody to know I'm awake, and I open up my bedroom window, and I slide out, and I get my keys, I throw my beanie on, and I start the car, and I roll down the street going to score. And to be honest with you, inside my heart hurted by this time. I was tired of using, and I was afraid of living, you know, and I had no answers. And I love when it says in the literature, in desperation, I was desperate, you know, I was alone without an answer. And so anyway, I go and I score again. This Sunday morning I wake up to go sell the suit, and I ain't got nothing happening. I'm a nickel and dime thief. And so I figure I can sell this suit maybe for $10-15, and I can run into one of you jerks, because that was my attitude about everybody. Everybody's a jerk, everybody's a mark, and God bless them, you know? And so I'm hoping I can run into another dope fiend, and me and him can put our money together, and we can cop enough dope, and we can get fixed so we can go steal from somebody else, so we can just do that the rest of our lives, because I don't have a way out. And I pick up this hitchhiker. He's got long hair, and I figure he's a flashback from the Haight Ash or something like this, and he's still smoking all of this weed and everything. And I figure, well, you know what? Maybe I can get this guy in my van. And I was going to my grandmother's house to steal one of my aunt's purses. You know, one of the aunts that burned me for the tortillas that I was pissed off about, you know. And so I go to my grandmother. I tell the guy, yeah, come on, I'll give you a ride. He's hitchhiking, see. And I walk into my grandmother's house, and all of my aunts are sitting there like little Chihuahua dogs. You know, they're all guarding their purses, you know. And you know how, I don't know how your family is, but you know, my family tolerated me. They didn't love me; they tolerated me. You know, when you would walk by, they'd try to take 3 steps back, not because they wanted to give you room; it's because they didn't want to get close to you. You know, and so anyway, I can't steal anybody's purse at Grandma's house. So the next duck that I got to work on is this guy with the long hair. See? But this guy is weird. See? This happened 15 years ago, and the way that it happened was that I'm in the van, and this guy looks at me and he says, "You're getting sick, right?" Right away I think this guy's a dope fiend. He knows he's a connection. He's got, you know, oh man, I'm going to have an easy day. All right, good, thank God, you know, no. So I think God's going to be good to me, see? And I says, yeah, man, I'm getting sick. And all of a sudden I go into my act, you know, I can hardly drive now, you know. Have pity on me, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting sick, man. As long as you guys weren't around, I'd put my tail between my legs in a minute. You know what I'm saying? I lived, like they say, you know, to use and use to live. And this guy tells me something really weird. He tells me, he says, I'm an addict, and I got 5 years of sobriety. I never heard that before, see? And I never heard it before. And he tells me he's got 5 years. What I heard is he had 5 pounds of sobriety, see? And I got all excited, man. My butt hole goes like this, you know what I mean? Whoa, we're going to fix, we're going to get loaded, you know? And I says, you got 5 pounds of what, you know? I thought I met a big connection, see? And he tells me, he says, I got 5 years of sobriety. And I look at him and I says, what's that? You know what I mean? If he would have told me he had 5 years clean, I would have thought he was a narc. See, because only narcs are clean, you know? If he'd told me he was a PTA member, I could relate, you know, yeah, they don't use no drugs. Okay? So he tells me he's got 5 years of sobriety, and I tell him, what's that? And he tells me he's in the program of Narcotics Anonymous, and they don't take nothing, see? And I still don't know where this guy's coming from, but the next line he says, I love it. He says, do you want to go to my house? See? And I said, this guy's a real duck. Nobody asked me to go to their house. See? And I get excited again. I says, yeah, I'll go to your house. And right away I'm going to start saying please and thank you. I'm going to start acting like a human being. I know how to act like a human being. I just don't really know how to be one, you know? And so I says, yeah, sure, I'd love to go to your house. You know, I start talking a different way now, you know? And right away when I'm thinking about this guy and going to his house, I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe he's got a watch on the bathroom sink or on the kitchen. Maybe they left a ring, you know? Worst comes to worst, I'll take a toaster, a lamp. I don't care what it is, see? I'm going to steal something from this guy because, I mean, somebody's inviting me in to steal something now, see? And I don't know what this program's about, see? I don't know that I'm the duck, see? Okay? I'm thinking this guy's the duck, see? And I have no idea that this guy has worked the 12 steps. He's got 5 years, see? He's been on hundreds of 12-step calls. He's seen a lot of weirdos like me. And I didn't understand that he just came from the flea market because him and his old lady got one of those resentments. You know how you get them in relationships? You get angry at the other person, and it makes you even walk home. So, keep the car, I don't care, I'll walk home. And I didn't know that they'd been in one of those, you know? And so anyway, I got here by a resentment, you know. And I've learned so many things behind resentments. Resentments have been a key for me, see? Because a resentment means one of two things. See, either it will kill me, but if I take it through the steps and I give this resentment to God, certain things will happen over and over again. I will become softer. I will become more loving. I will have the ability to forgive. I will have the ability to have some compassion and some concern for somebody else. But if I get the resentment and I keep it by myself, what ends up happening is that resentment spreads and I can't contain it. It's like the obsession. And so anyway, we go to his house, right? And by the time we get to his house, all of the other 4 people are there. There's 5 of them there. And 4 of them are in the kitchen, and this guy's always next to me. And I could tell that there's some kind of dope fiends. I don't know what kind they are yet, see? I don't know what they're into. I know they ain't into glue, or you could smell it right away, see? And so this guy keeps talking to me. But my eyes are just scamming the whole house. I don't hear a word he's saying, see? But I keep listening to those 4 people that are in the kitchen because I keep waiting to hear a can go. You know that sound, that nice sound? You know? I keep waiting to hear him talking like, I don't hear nobody talking like that, you know? And I keep thinking maybe they're tying off in there or something like that, and these guys are stingy, and I got to show them that I'm a regular, you know, and I got to start talking about how many people I've killed, you know, so that they can know I'm all right. And those 4 people don't come out of the kitchen. This guy, every now and then, he gets up and he goes in there. So I figure, you know what? I'm going to tell the guy I got to go to the bathroom, see, because I'm going to go through the bathroom and I'm going to find that watch again, see? And I leave the keys in the car and I leave the screen door open because I'm ready to steal something and have all of these healthy buggers chase me down the road if it's going to be one of those days, see? You know, they call it ripping and running, and so I was ready to rip and I was ready to run, you know? And so anyway, what ends up happening is I tell the guy, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. He looks at me, he says, I got to go too, you know. And see, I don't know that he's a professional 12-stepper, see. Yeah. And so anyway, we go to the bathroom and he's got his foot open on the door and I'm looking at him, you know, and he's looking at me, and I'm not shooting any submarines, believe me. I'm just looking around, you know. And so anyway, I see that I'm handcuffed, and I leave the bathroom, and I'm kind of pissed off, and I'm trying to figure out what's my next move going to be. And they don't do nothing, and they keep bringing me coffee. So I start thinking maybe they're getting loaded behind the coffee. Maybe it's in the coffee. Maybe they're weird, you know. So I start downing the coffee. Nothing happened, you know. And the nice thing that happened was that, as quiet as it's kept, a prayer was being answered, and I was in the middle of God's will, and I absolutely did not know it. See? I did not know it. What I love about that is that there's lots of times today my prayers are being answered and I continue to worry. See? And I don't even know that they're being answered. Like right now, I believe a lot of prayers are being answered for me. See? And I don't even know it. So anyway, I'm there in the pads because I got to that room and I picked up that hitchhiker behind some prayers. Because there was so many years, for a long time, I says, God, when is it going to end? I'm tired of this. See? I remember 3 days before that, I was in a bathroom in Palo Alto, and I pretended like I was sick because every time for the past 4 years, I would get on, 40, 30 milligrams of methadone, and I would tell them I want to get off. So in 30 days, they would lower me down to 5 milligrams, and by the time I was at 5 milligrams, I was up to 3 spoons, so I had to ask them to get back on, and they would jack me back up, and then my spoon habit would go down, and I went like that for a year, trying to get off, and I couldn't ever get off, And I'm in a bathroom and I'm crying and I'm strung out to the max and I'm insane and I'm telling God, when is this going to end for me? I says, if you don't do something to help me, I says, you know what, I was ready to take myself out. I was ready to go do an armed robbery and I was ready to just go do some jail time, go to the joint and get some rest, because I was tired, man. And so anyway, we come back from the bathroom, I sit down, and then he goes in there one more time. See, and I don't know what they're talking about. I think that they're setting me up or something like that, and I'm starting to feel kind of weird. And I didn't know that they were in the kitchen talking about, like, what did you bring him home for? He's a using addict, and who's going to take care of him? We can't get him in a recovery house. Well, you take care of him. No, I ain't taking no more people at my house. You take him. You brought him. You know what? They steal from your house. He's your thing. Men work with men. Women work with women. Hey, you know what? So on and so forth. And I didn't know that they were talking about all of this, see? Who are they going to dump this newcomer on? See? Yeah. And they're over there plotting what they're going to do with my life, see? And I didn't know that. I thought they were getting ready to burn me big time, see? And I'm starting to get antsy and I'm starting to get a little bit, I'm starting to put my walls up big time. And what ends up happening is they all come out. And they say that a meeting is wherever two people are gathered. And they talk about the NA way, there's a meeting right there. And so anyway, what ends up happening is they all come out and they all sit in front of me and around me and everything like this, and they start telling me their stories. See? They start to share their experience, and I started listening to all of them because they were all in front of me. And the nice part about using is that I was right in that place where I hadn't fixed. My skin is itching. I'm getting cold. I'm wishing that I had a mommy. I wish that I was back on Delma Street and I was just being hugged by my dad. I wish that I wasn't this way. I wish that I didn't have to live or think like this. See? And these people are starting to tell me all of this stuff that had happened to them. And what they're doing is they're touching my heart, one right after another. And they keep knocking me down, slowly but surely inside. They share their experience, and then they started to share their strength. They started telling me that they haven't had to use. The one guy had 5 years, his old lady had 6 years, another guy had 3 years, and somebody else had 90 days. And they're telling me they're dope fiends. And they're telling me they don't have to use no more, they go to work. They're telling me that they have somebody to talk to, see, and that I don't have to be afraid. See? So they share their experience with me. They share their strength with me, and I felt it. And all of a sudden, I started to get some hope. You know what? Maybe, if I go with these people, maybe I can stop using. And they take me home. And I got my 2 kids hanging on my legs like Mario was hanging on my leg today. And they say, Daddy, don't go. Say, and I'm wondering once again, why do they love me? Can't they see that I'm no good for them? See? And I just let my heart lead me. I says, I have to go with these people. Daddy needs some help. See? And I went with those people. And I checked into a recovery house. And you people blew me out. Number one, you're weird. See? You guys hugging, laughing, smiling, but nobody's smoking any weed. Now that's puzzling, see?
And nobody's drinking any
Booze, because when you drink booze, you hug everybody. When you smoke weed, you laugh all the time, you know? And when you use crank, you're running around like crazy, like we've been doing here for the past 4 days, you know? I got a friend out here who hasn't slept for 3 days, and he's loving it. You know what I mean? Only cranksters do that kind of stuff. And they got to be using crank, you know? And so anyway, what ends up happening is I get into the program, and all of the stuff that happened at Delmas started happening again. You know, I started getting my feelings hurt. I started resenting people in the meetings. I started distrusting people. They said, get a sponsor. I says, I ain't getting nobody. The only person that I thought that you ever called was either a bail bondsman or the connection. You know, what else do you use the phone for? You know? And they're saying, you got to get a sponsor, you got to use the phone, you got to tell them when you're hurting, blah, 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 blah. I'm saying everybody's weak here. You know, I didn't know that everybody was being human beings, and they were sharing their pain so that we could share our recovery. You know? What ended up happening is for the first year I go in and out, I go in and out, I go in and out because I didn't want to work the 12 steps the way they were suggested and the way that our text talks about them. At the end of I got one of these, I got in a relationship because when I stopped using, I had to put something in its place. And I went back to my father's teachings there, and I started just collecting women, you know, make me feel good, you know, boom, boom, boom. And I would get in and out of them like I would change shoes, you know. If it stopped making me feel good, I would go get another one to make me feel good. If this one had too many problems, just like my dope, I'd go get some other dope. You know what I mean? And I used women just like I used dope. If they made too much noise, I went and got a quiet one. If I didn't like the quiet one, I went and got a noisy one. If this one's buns wasn't big enough, I went and got this one's buns that were bigger. You know? And I just went on and on and on. Okay. And I went in and out of that stuff, and so anyway, what ends up happening is that I deal with everything except really what's happening with me inside. I've prayed about this because it's been so important, you know, and I just want to share with my heart with you what's happened with me in recovery. I was so afraid and so mixed up and so confused and so full of hate that I was afraid to tell anybody that I hurted so much. See, I was afraid to tell anybody what happened with me and Uncle Bobby. I was afraid to get honest, see. And I walked around here looking just for the magic again, see. I was just going to hear something and everything was going to go away. I didn't want to work on the 12 steps. It was too hard because, number one, you had to talk to other people so that you could work the steps, and I wanted to try to do this alone. And I found out that I cannot do this alone. I need you people. My strength is you people. See? Without you people, I'm nothing. See? And so anyway, I come back, I get a sponsor. I did this program just like I did burglaries, man. I had problem meeting people, and so what I would do is I would get a meeting and I would go to it early before all of you weird people got there, see? Because if there was more than 5 or 6 or 10 people, I couldn't hang, you know? Too much action. You couldn't keep your eye on everybody, you know? You know, you're going to turn your back and somebody's going to be around you with open arms and, you know, you can't get away from them. And so I would get there early and I would set up the coffee. See, I can handle one dude. See, I can burn one person at a time, see. And so anyway, I would get there early and I would walk into the meeting and I would be all stiff and I'd tell him, you need help? You know? He says, yeah, you want to help put up chairs? I says, yeah, I could do that. You know? I was lonely, man. I was tired of being by myself, but I would walk in there playing it off like, do you need help? I don't need any. You know what I'm saying? I'm here to help you, you know? And he would say, yeah, I need some help setting up the coffee and everything. And I got jazz behind the coffee. I would set up the coffee like I set up my outfit, you know? I'd have the napkins piled up real neat, and I'd have the spoons all thing, and I'd get a little cup and sugar, and I'd fix this thing up, and then when you slobs come in, you know, and I'm over there sitting against the wall, and I check you people out, and I get resentments. That fucking guy, look at the way he's throwing that paper around. Look at the way, why doesn't no people, don't they know how hard I worked on that? You know what I'm saying? And I get mad at you guys, see? I gotta, you know. But now, see, the kid on Delmas has a sponsor, see, an interpreter, see, because I don't know how to think, and I don't know what to do with my feelings, and so I start telling them about what I'm thinking, I start telling them what I'm feeling, and he starts interpreting my thoughts, you know what I mean? And he starts letting me know, you know what? You're judging people. You're taking this too serious. It's only coffee, Frank. It's not dope. You know what I mean? Nobody's burning you. See? Because I thought you guys were disrespecting me. They don't even know that you did that. You know? They don't know that you're putting everything out real purty for them. You know? See, I'm saying, man, you know what they're doing, man? You know how slobs they are? You know? And so anyway, my sponsor's getting all these heavy calls from me. You know? See, but I took him at his word. He says, call me about anything. See? So I started calling him about anything. See? I mean, you know, you're in the program a couple years and somebody tells you that they're messing up napkins, you're thinking, this guy's crazy. See? This guy's nuts. We're talking mucho inventories here. See? And so anyway, I get a meeting and I start doing that. I get there early, see? I get there early before everybody gets there. And as soon as everybody gets up after the meeting, I found a way to escape from that. You know, all the hugging, the love you, or else standing around with your hands in your pockets waiting for somebody to hug you. And then when they want to hug you, you want to freak. But then if they don't hug you, you say, I knew it. They don't like me. You know? Nobody notices me. The newcomer's the most important person. Yeah, right. You know? Look at the way they click up here. And it's just like the streets. You know? And then I call my sponsors. Nobody likes me. They're all a bunch of liars. I'm the most important. Nobody even talks to me. He says, who have you been talking to? I says, nobody. I don't need to talk to him. He says, well, it's a two-way street. So he starts explaining all of this stuff to me. But after the meetings, you know what I would do? Is that right away see, I'm real busy. I'm too busy to say goodbye. I'm too busy to say where you're going. Because I'm into picking up ashtrays. See? And I'm picking up ashtrays and I'm acting real busy and I'm stacking cups. And it's my job to clean up this meeting, see? Because you slobs ruined everything. And so... But see, the reason that I love that is because there was always a couple other scared people like me. See? And once the meeting would mellow out, there'd be another guy picking up cups, and I could talk to him. And what started happening is I started walking into meetings, and all of a sudden the secretary would say, hey, Frank, how you doing? You know, somebody started knowing who I was. And then the secretary knows everybody, and he would start saying, hey, Frank, do you know this guy? You know, no, I don't know. You know? Well, meet him, Frank. Yeah. In California, we shake hands a lot. We're not tremendous huggers. We're working on it. You know, we're learning from you people. And so, you know, just the small things. And I don't ever want to forget that, see, because my primary purpose is what? You know? I asked myself, I went to a meeting here and they talked about the primary purpose and they talk about that it's carrying the message. And what is the message? You know, when I was brand new, you couldn't tell me about the steps. I seen the steps by how you loved me. I seen the steps by how you kept accepting me. I seen the steps by how you didn't judge me. No. I seen the steps by how you just over and over again said, hello, Frank. You know, you showed me your love and your warmth in this program. You know, and that's my primary purpose, is to show that and to give that and to be that. You know, it's that simple. You know, but to have that, it says in step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carried the message to the addict who still suffers. And I have my bouts with the steps. I hated to do the inventory. I had to do step 1, step 2, and step 3 on step 4 because I wasn't going to tell a dead dog. I finally had to get away and I had to say to God that I was powerless over the inventory because it scared me. It threatened my existence. I had to take step 2 and I had to tell him, I got to come to believe that you'll give me the proper attitude about the 4th step because my attitude is that it's going to hurt me. See? And then I had to take step 3 and I had to say, you know what, when it comes to the 4th step, give me the strength and the courage that it's going to take to write this stuff because I'm tired of carrying around this guilt and shame. I carried around everybody with me that I grew up with. I carried around Frankie, Tony, Mario, Vincent, all of the things about my children. Thank God, not Mario. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I write an inventory and I get to write about Uncle Bobby. I get to write about Cuca and Carlos and everybody, you know. And what this did for me is it gave me a sense of understanding. It gave me a sense of forgiveness. And I felt a little bit different. My sponsor told me, don't we often put ourselves in the position to be hurt? And I put myself in the position to be hurt every time I expect you to act a certain way, because when you act just like you are, whether you're hurt, whether you're confused, whether you're bitter, whether you're sad, and I expect you to always be loving to me, I set myself up to be hurt because I don't let you be you, you know. I want to talk about, I've been in the program for a while, and they talk about in the first step, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction. See? The first year that I came here, I tried to stay clean on my own. I'm going to remember that I'm powerless. I'm going to remember that I can't use. I'm going to stay away from everybody. I'm going to talk a certain way. Because, you know, they said, what step you work? I'm working the first step. You can always tell a newcomer when he's working the first step because he's always saying, oh, get powerless. The bus will be here. You know, turn it over, man. Can't you get powerless? You know, let go, man. Get powerless. Turn it over. Oh, look at the dude. He's not powerless. You know what I mean? And that's the way that I work the first step. Get powerless, man. Oh, look at that cab driver. He's not powerless. You know? And I thought that I would think the first step, see? But what ends up happening, I look up the word powerless in the dictionary, and it says not able to perform any good effect. See? And left to my own devices, I can't even remember that I'm powerless, because life, as we know it, after we're in this program, has many surprises. You know, it has many responsibilities. It has children, it has wives, it has lovers, it has friends. And those things, you know, take a lot out of a person. And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I tell God to help me to remember and help me not to forget, and I thank Him for that, and I ask Him for that on a daily basis, to remember that I'm an addict and that I can't use, no matter what shape or form or whatever new comes out on the market, that it'll never happen for me again. It'll always be the same, destructive, you know. And because of that, you know, I haven't had to use anything, you know. And so I'm in the program, and me and my wife now, my wife's coming up on 10 years. I've got 14 years in the program. And we've been married for 9 years in this program. Okay? And yeah. And it hasn't been easy, see, but it's been worth every minute of it. My wife is an addict, and addicts are very self-centered. See? Another thing that an addict is an addict expects everything when they want it, how they want it. So when I'm being selfish, she's expecting, and when she's expecting, I'm being selfish. And if we don't have a higher power to separate and to get us together, we would have broken up thousands of times. See? Because there's lots of times, man, that I've had to go to the bedroom, you know, on my relationship, because I found out that God, see, is the author of love. He is love Himself. See? And if I do not have a relationship with God, I will not have the ability to love my wife when she's in one of those periods or times. See? So I don't, and I don't mean to talk bad about my wife, because I love her. See, my wife is like my right arm. You know, that's how close she is to me, you know. And so anyway, what ends up happening, there's been lots of times, man, my wife is in a situation where she's working through something, but you know what the good part about it is today, is that when she's not able to give love, I've been learned and I've been taught in this program that I back off her. But you know what I have to do to survive? I've had to either go find a newcomer, and lots of times that doesn't happen, because anytime I go to a meeting, the meeting works from the outside in. When I go find somebody to help, that works from the outside in. When I call my sponsor, it works from the outside in. When I read something, it happens from the outside in. But when I go pray, it works from the inside out. See, it's an inside job. See, because even though I wrote about Frankie and Delma Street and Uncle, see, I'm always going to have feelings. I'm a very, very sensitive person. See. And I don't exclude myself from you, and I know that you're all very sensitive. And there are times when I walk and I want to be held. I want to be loved. I want to be touched. But when somebody can't do it for you, See, I used to say, you know what, this relationship is not working anymore. I need my space. I need my freedom. See, I need to find myself. See? And really what I'm saying is I got to go find somebody else that'll fix me. That's what I'm saying. See? And so anyway, what ends up happening is that I have walks. And I go for walks and I tell God, I'm scared and I'm afraid. You know? And I'm not able to get close to my wife right now, and she's having some difficulty. And you know what, God? I found out what the true definition of love is here. See? Because the definition that I had about love before was give to me, take care of me, touch me, feel me, hold me. That sounds pretty selfish. See? And I found out that love is I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to wait, and I'm going to trust. And sometimes I'm going to have to walk alone. And I'm going to have courage, see? And I don't have any of those things, but when I pray, God fills my heart up with those things. And there's been times in this program, especially here, whether you're married or single, there has been some women that have been outrageous, see, in their dress manners, see? And I don't say that downwardly. I mean, they're just very, very beautiful, see? And I'm married for 9 years, but I'm still human, and my eyeballs have been going, wham, 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 you know. And what's happening is that, you know, and I'm talking about basic stuff on the curb, the stuff that you're dealing with all of the time, you know. And what I have to do, man, is that I found out the reason the grass looks greener on the other side is because I don't cut my own lawn and water it, you know. And so I found out that there's times, man, I take a walk, you know. See, I used to get always tripped out by lust. I'm lustful today. Let's go to the Lustfuls Anonymous, or, you know, is there a meeting on lust? You know, I need to hear something new, you know. And what's happening is that I found out, because I took it through the 11th step. It says we saw through prayer and meditation. You can do this with any topic. Saw through prayer and meditation of what? Knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry it out. I didn't need knowledge on lust because I was always becoming a victim of it. See? You ever been at a convention and, you know, for 3 days all you are is lustful? And if you don't get none, you are a basket case. And even if you do get some, you are a guilty case. Right? Either way, you're empty. See? And so anyway, what ends up, because I speak from experience, believe me, I have gone to conventions with a hunt attitude. I'm going to find it. I'm going to knock it off. I'm going to feel good this weekend. See? I'm going to a convention. You know, my attitude of a convention was women. See, so anyway, I found out the way lust happens, and it happens with this. They say if we don't take the first drug, we can't get loaded. There's lots of times I have to work a program that if I don't take the first look, I can't get lustful. And it's hard, because sometimes I have to look at women from here up. There's some days where I'm working it pretty good, and I can look at them without any lust and just look at and appreciate that that is a beautiful person. See? But there's some days, yeah. Because what ends up happening is this, is I look at them, and then I say, wow. And then if I look too long, I start thinking, man, well, that would be really nice. Okay? And then if I start thinking that too long, pretty soon the thought becomes an insanity, and then it becomes an obsession, and then pretty soon I'm talking to somebody with alternative motives, and it becomes an act, you know? And it's the same way with using. You know, if I start thinking about it too much, and I don't tell nobody about what I'm thinking about, and this is for me. See, this is so that I could stay clean. Because I found out staying clean just doesn't mean not using. See, I got to keep my heart clean. And so anyway, I'm going to get ready to close. The other thing that I really want to spend a little bit of time is talking about is resentments. See, it says, you know, in the traditions, once again, as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that will tear us apart, all will be well. I have a family. Me and my wife together have 8 children, okay? We got 3 girls, and we got 5 boys. We got a dog. He's blind. His name is Moose. We got a pigeon. What's the pigeon's name? Huh? Sky is the parrot's name. That bird, he messes all over the place. I've had, you know, anyway, that's Mario's thing, so I got to turn it over. So, anyway, what's happening is that I'm in my house, right? You live in a house, okay, you got a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 6 years old, and you got a wife, see? and you're an addict, you are going to get some resentments. Believe me. See? Because if you're King Kong, sometimes, and everybody's supposed to walk at your pace and do the things that you want them to do when you want them to do because you're insane and you're not in touch with sharing and caring, you're going to get some resentments. And I get them lots of times at home. There has been times in my house that I have not wanted some of my children to be there. This goes where? It goes once again like it was on Delmas. And pretty soon, if I don't go to the bedroom and if I don't talk to God about all of those things, believe me, this is true for me. I can't get rid of those resentments. I cannot get rid of them. I have to write about them sometimes. I have to take them through 6 and 7. See, because 6 and 7 talk about defects of character, and my character is made up of my thoughts. See? And the defect of character that happens inside here is my thoughts. My thoughts go, and if I don't sort them out through the steps and through the healing process, they become a defect. And how do they come out? They come out in my character. Get away from me. Me and my son get into some arguments that are not nice. He is in my face and I'm in his face. And the other day we were arguing. And he tells me, he's 19 years old. He's a young man. He says, what are you going to do? You going to hit me? You going to hit me? I'm telling him, quit cussing in the house. If we're trying to have a conversation, let's talk. Let's not be starting to cuss. You can't start saying all that stuff. You're going to have to learn how to talk, Sal. You can't just go on, so on and so forth. And he says, you're going to hit me? I says, I'm not going to hit you. I says, I want to talk to you. And so we start talking again. Me and my wife, him, his girlfriend. And after we talk, we're able to pray together. And that's one of the biggest things that I want to thank you people for. Because if it wasn't for this program, I would have taught my children what my Uncle Poli taught me. Don't trust anybody. I would have taught my kids to hate. I would have taught them to get back at people. I would have taught them all of those things. You people have broken the chain. See? You've broken the chain. Not only have I been clean, but because of this program, I lead a healthy life today, and my thoughts, that's what my life is. It's my thoughts, and my thoughts stay pretty healthy because the steps will restore me to sanity, and sanity means health, And so, I don't know. In closing, I want to say that I have a business. I've worked for myself for 8 years. I got to go home. Monday, I get on a plane. I go back to my own area. I go back to my own home. I got my daughter Tiffany and my son-in-law Tom, and Sal's in the house, Veronica's in the house, and Tony's in the house. And what's really, really nice, I can tell this program is working because my teenagers get in the back with their racing set, and I get 4 and 5 and 6 teenagers, and they're always at my house. Sometimes I got to run them away. But when I was a kid, I never wanted to be at home because I wasn't comfortable there. And I could tell that it's working because all of these kids, they keep coming to my house, and so they're comfortable there. But when I go home, I'm self-employed. And if you're self-employed, it means that anytime you finish a job, you're really unemployed. See? And so, if you've got a good job, and, think twice about going, self-employed, because really what it means is that I have to have an employer that I'm always working for and with. And that employer is my higher power. See? I got to go home, and I've got to go knocking on doors. I have a tree service, and I've got to go knocking on doors. See? And I need a certain amount of money by a certain time. See? And the first convention that I ever went to, I stood and I got against a car and I looked at the convention and I said, this has been beautiful and this has been nice. But I asked God to help me to learn something from that first convention. And in my heart, He let me know, you know what? The only people that won't be here next year are the people that won't bring the resentments to me. They won't get a sponsor. They won't let me touch them through another person. Something tragic will happen in their life, Frank, and they'll forget that I can help them and they won't bring it to me. And so what I've learned is from now until the next convention, I'm going to have to keep taking everything to you people when I can't talk to God so that you can explain His will to me and His love. See, because in the NA text it talks about that you are my ears and eyes. When I can't see, you can help me see. When I can't hear, you can help me hear. Because without you people, I'm nothing, And so anyway, I want to thank the committee once again. I've got a thing that I would like to close with. most of all, they say that the magic is real, and what's real about this program is that it is going to take everything that you have, not all at once. That's the good part. It's taken everything that I have to stay here, but I haven't had to give it all at once. Just one day at a time, I've had to give everything that I have. So if you would love to join me, I'd like to stand and give a standing ovation to our higher power for the real good life that we have today. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.